Hello and welcome to our podcast series, Safeguarding Children with SEND. In this next set of podcasts, we are chatting to DSLs, family support workers, head teachers from across the country to talk about how they safeguard children with SEND needs. Today we have Melanie Banks with us. Good morning, Melanie.
Good morning, Madeline.
Would you like to tell us a bit about yourself and the school you work at?
Yep, sure. I am DSL at the Milestone School in Gloucester, which is part of a set of schools which became an academy in 2019. We're expanding to school number 6 in September. That's a mixture of mainstream and SEN schools, mostly SEN to be fair. And we serve Cheltenham and Gloucester. We've got 322.5 children on roll currently. I'd like to meet the 0.5, yep. So we're quite a big school and we're certainly the biggest in the academy. As a result of that, we've got a substantial safeguarding team. There's myself and my colleague Louise, who she was part of the family support team before I ever joined. And that was my main role in, really. I became a family support worker. We've kind of worked our way up through the safeguarding hierarchy. And we became joint DSLs in September because we don't work a full week. I work 4 days, Louise works 3, so there's always cover.
What needs do they have? What needs do the children have at your school?
We have the full range of need, really. So we've got PMLD classes, which is your profound medical and learning disabilities. So we deal with those all the way through the autistic spectrum, and we have like an SCMH angle on some of our senior classes that, who, if you would, you would look at them, you'd think they would manage quite happily in mainstream, but they wouldn't. A lot of them display challenging behaviours or developmentally delayed, so they provide another challenge completely.
So if we're talking about safeguarding the children in your school, can you talk about how the communication works with your children when it comes to safeguarding concerns? What do you have in place?
Well, we're a communication-rich environment. We are, Ofsted got us as outstanding at our last inspection, and we are a communication school. So we've got just about everything you could think of. We've got Makaton signing, objects of reference, symbols, photos, iPads, bespoke communication aids to support every child. And we start that at very early. We have children from the age of 2 up to the age of 16 at Milestone, so we kind of like foster that ability to communicate right from the get-go, because the frustration type behaviours that we see are often as a result of not being able to make themselves known. So we've recently started using something called Books Beyond Words, which is basically a photo book, if you like, or there's a lot of resources just coming out, and we've already started using it positively to get children to share their experiences, and identify with the people that they're looking at pictures about. Our class sizes are smaller as well. I mean, I think our maximum class size is about 12 or 13 children. So so that's massively different to a mainstream environment, and the staff pupil ratio is higher. The staff know the children really, really well, and their instinct that something is amiss is a great kind of tool, if you like, for looking to unpick a little bit further about what might be wrong, because behaviour is communication, and that's something that is kind of our bread and butter in an SEND environment, because a lot of our children, for whatever reason, either choose not to speak or they can't speak. So looking at the whole presentation is what it's all about. It's not just about what they can and can't say.
So what kind of cues do you look out for?
Being withdrawn, being agitated, they're how they react to instruction, how they present in class, how they get on with their peers, how they get on with the class team. It's a lot of different layers, but as I say, a lot of our children, we don't do classes by age so much. We have a middle, a foundation and a senior department, but we don't, you can have many different year groups in one class, if you like. So you can have like from year 5 to year 8 in one class, because it's very much on what's going on with those children and the ability of those children. So, and a lot of children actually stay with the same teacher for maybe 2 or 3 years, so they get to know them and the family, and that's a very useful tool with safeguarding.
So could you tell me about the importance of a child's voice then when it comes to safeguarding?
Well, what do we mean by the child's voice, really? Because obviously I've just said a lot of our children cannot speak, so we can't rely on the words. So it's not, it doesn't always relate to what they say exactly, but loads of aspects of their presentation. As I said before, they can appear withdrawn, appear agitated. There's always a reason for that. It's always good practice to keep, and I do it a lot, I keep the child at the centre of everything that I do, in so much as that if, when I'm writing a report for conference or whatever it is, I will try and get a picture of the child on my laptop so that I can actually see their face, I can think about them and put their needs, and making sure that I'm not thinking about anybody else but the child. Because a lot of serious case reviews have often said that the child's voice is not heard. The communication is poor. A lot of professionals will be led astray, if you like, by the voice of the parents, and especially with our children that can't speak, you have to listen to somebody, and sometimes the parent will put things from their perspective, and you can be drawn away very easily from what the child is presenting with, and then what the child is trying to tell us by their behaviour, by their body language, and by their presentation.
So when you are reporting concerns, when it comes to these children, when you're writing it up, obviously you can't write down what they say, so you write down about their behaviours, like you said.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Obviously sometimes you can do work with the children about what makes them happy, what makes them sad, and you can, and you can get views on parents kind of that way, where's your happy place, where, what do you like doing, what you like who do you like spending time with, that kind of things. And they can, they can tell you a lot about, obviously not the non-verbals totally, but people with emergent verbal kind of voices, they can tell us a little bit about what's going on, and who they love, who they like to spend time with. And it's how you pitch the work, because direct questions don't work, obviously, and you have to maybe know them well enough to maybe use charts, or however, symbols or whatever, however they feel. Can you point to happy or sad? Are you happy or sad with mummy? And they can point. Or it's just knowing the child, really, and knowing how to get the best out of them, which is very, very sad, because obviously that's not achieving best evidence.
No.
And working with outside agencies is difficult, because they want best evidence, and a lot of the time our children can't provide that.
So what happens at that point then?
Do you really want to get me started on what happens next?
Yes.
A lot of the time it just doesn't work. Because you can't achieve best evidence from the child, and social care and police they're not professionals within this field, and they find it very, very difficult to get what they need from the child, and things often fall between cracks, shall I say. And children obviously sometimes end up living poor life experiences for longer than is necessary, because they need a certain line to be crossed, threshold and all that, and by our reports sometimes it doesn't always get there,
just because that they can't talk,
because they cannot talk. As I say, we can do our very best to provide an overview, and to give them the tools that they need to work with that child as well, to try and get what's needed, but it doesn't always work. And unless a child is actually saying, this has happened to me, a lot of the time it does, they do fall between the cracks. Getting better, I would like to say, in some places, but unfortunately, currently in Gloucester, our children's services are in special measures. So we have a high turnover of social workers. There's a lack of continuity, and a lot of social workers within the safeguarding side of things, not the disabled children and young people side of things, haven't got any SEN training. So it's very difficult, and they do rely on school quite heavily to support them with talking to children, etc. But at the end of the day, it's got to be what they get out of it, what the social worker gets out of the communication with the child, that actually influences what goes forward.
So actually, if we're thinking about their vulnerabilities, one of the vulnerabilities is actually that they can't verbally communicate.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and it's the reason why SEN children are 4 times more likely to become victims of abuse, because they are dependent on others for their voice and for everything in life. They they see a lot more people as well, if you think about it, because they've got just in a normal school day, shall we say, we've got they see mum and dad, then they go on a taxi into school, so they'll see a driver and an escort, and they'll come into school and they'll have a teacher and maybe 4 teaching assistants. They might see the OT, the speech and language, the physiotherapist. Then they might go to an after school club. So they've got another driver, another escort. They've got a group of professionals at the after school centre. Then they go back home, and then they might have PA hours on a weekend. So they are exposed to more adults than your average child of the same age, I would say. So that obviously increases their risk of falling foul of somebody that might not have the best intentions. But on the other hand, they might have less contact if maybe they don't access all those out of school things, or they don't access a school with SEN. They've got fewer opportunities, and therefore they can be prey to maybe a parent that's overtired, overwhelmed, can't cope, loses their rag, etc. So it's so unfair that the most vulnerable are the least heard.
So we talked about the barriers mainly to do with verbal communication when it comes to a child sharing their safeguarding concern, but what are the other barriers?
Disabled children have the same right to protection as other children, but unfortunately, when abuse is reported to, say, police or children's social care, the response may be affected by a professional's lack of skill in that area. As I say, police I find particularly disappointing, I have to say. Achieving best
Why is
evidence,
that?
they just don't have the time to sit down they don't have the time to spend getting the best out of the child.
Right.
It's if they're not, it's skills that they're not taught. It's they want to ask questions and they want answers, and if they can, a lot of our children are very good with yes or no answers, but that is taught as a leading question. So you can't say did mummy or daddy hit you, because that's a leading question. But if you said to the child, for example, has mummy ever been mean to you? Have you ever felt unsafe with mummy? They don't understand what you're asking them.
Yeah.
So, but you're not allowed to say, did mummy hit you?
No.
So so they're just not going to get what they want from it, which is unfortunate because of the language that they need to use, because obviously it's got to be unbiased language, but our children don't get the nuances of that. They need to be a direct yes or no, a or B answer. So that's very, very difficult. I mean, and so the time that takes to get, it might take a couple of meetings, because obviously if you're introducing a new person to a child with additional needs, they might not feel comfortable with that person. So you might have to do a couple of kind of like getting to know you type visits before you actually get into there with your interview. And sometimes that can't always happen because of time constraints, because for whatever reason. So it is very, very difficult. I find I have to be, or we have to be in my team, persistent, tenacious, and not worry about providing a healthy challenge to outside agencies. That's the way we make the child's voice heard, really.
Yeah.
by just being tenacious. I'm sure social care is sick of, some of us, because we do tend to ask a lot of questions, and to be fair, that's what we have to do because the child can't.
Yeah. And the fact is, you're just trying to safeguard the child at the end of the day.
Yeah,
So raising
absolutely.
questions isn't necessarily a bad thing, is it?
You'd be surprised.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you'd be surprised. What you can and what you are and what you're not allowed to say, and what you are and what you're not allowed to challenge. I think the deeper that people get into special measures, the more adverse they are to healthy challenge.
Oh.
That's certainly what I find.
So we talked about the barriers, with the police and the local authority. Are there any barriers sometimes with parents at all?
Definitely. I mean, it's never nice to have tricky questions asked of you, and it's something that we have to do all the time. I mean, if a child comes in and says something along the lines of, my mummy left me alone
Hmm.
with my sister, and this child's only, say, 8 years old, you have to ring up. We've got a duty of care to ring, so we ring.
Yeah.
And oh no, they've got at the wrong end of the stick, they don't understand, no, I didn't do that. So then you have to try, there's ways and means of asking these questions, but a lot of the time we, it's all depending on the parent, of course, and we do get some hostility around that, because we have to ask the questions, because we have to be the child's advocate
Yeah.
and just check in that everything's okay. Obviously, with children with additional needs, especially the ones that aren't as steady on their feet or use a lot of equipment, bruising is quite a thing.
Yeah.
So, and we do get bruises in some funny places.
Right.
And because, obviously, slings and hoists and things can cause bruising in around the hips and around places that you wouldn't normally expect to get bruises. And trying to ask a parent, how did you see that bruise, or did you know how so and so got that? It can make some parents quite defensive, and we kind of understand, but we've also got to do our due diligence by that child and just check in on everything. We get some parents that might have been through the system before and overcompensate, if you see what I mean. They are very their child has got a bruise and they ring in and tell us, which we prefer that, to be honest, rather than having to ring home.
Yeah.
And they say things like, oh, he bumped into a flower pot and the flower pot fell, and then he went to pick it up and he toppled over, so he hit this side. The really convoluted kind of explanations, and sometimes that's equally as worrying as the parent that gets defensive because they're trying, it's too embellished, if you know what I mean. I mean,
Yeah.
you've almost got to be a detective
Yeah.
as a safeguarding lead, just to try and unpick all the evidence and making sure you're doing the right thing.
If you had to give advice to the mainstream schools on safeguarding children with SEND needs, what would your advice be to them?
Look, listen, be aware. The type of child that you are going to get in a mainstream environment, who has additional needs, are probably going to be more along your SCMH and developmental delay kind of child. And these are ones that we're looking at now, and we're seeing them exposed to criminal exploitation, sexual exploitation, just because of their need to feel wanted, to feel part of a group, and to feel accepted.
Hmm.
There's been a lot of work done lately around, the vulnerability of the SEN child within a gang. And, these are the children that are going to be involved in county lines, running things here and there for various people, because they want to feel like they're part of the established group. They want to be popular.
Yeah.
So that's certainly a thing in a mainstream school to look out for. I mean, as I said, we've got an established senior department where, for a fair number of our children would fit into that bracket. And it's something that, they struggle very much with online issues and being taken advantage of within an online community. So we do a lot of work on online safety and making children aware that actually not everybody's what they say they might be, and
Yeah.
not everybody's to be trusted. But know your child, know who, just listen. If they're coming in one day and they've got brand new trainers, but mum couldn't afford to buy them that, you need to be aware of that. Where did they get those brand new trainers? Why did they get those brand new trainers? The child that might be withdrawn, previously been quite happy and loving school, and suddenly isn't taking part in as many activities, or their presentations dipping. Is something going on at home? Has somebody lost their job at home? Is somebody taking drugs, alcohol? Are they not paying attention to the child's needs? It's things like it's little things that you learn to pick up on. And I was a nurse before I worked at Milestones, and I worked with babies, and a lot of our kind of like knowing the child and gut instinct kind of played a massive part of that. And that's something that's followed me into this role, is that you follow your gut. If you think there's a problem, there might well be, and you just might need to unpick it a little bit more. We have a system at our school, Sleuth. A lot of children use schools use CPOMs and other such recording devices, and people come to me and say, Mel, blah 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 blah, do you think I need to put that on Sleuth? And I say, if you think you need to put it on Sleuth, put it on Sleuth.
Yeah.
Because a gut instinct is an amazing thing around children that you've got to know well.
Yeah.
And if you think there's something wrong, there usually is.
Yeah, that's good advice. Thank you. I've got a few quick fire questions for you now. Are you ready?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so what are your top 3 non-negotiables for safeguarding?
Okay, number 1.
Yeah.
Safeguarding is everybody's business.
Yeah.
Midday supervisor to head teacher to site team to pool staff. It's everybody's business. If you see something, you need to talk about it, or find somebody that would know more.
Like it.
Number 2, the child should be at the centre of the process. And as I said, I regularly put a photograph of the child up when I'm writing reports, just to remind me that I'm not listening to what mum's saying, I'm not listening to what grandma's saying, and I'm not listening to what the social worker's saying. I'm looking and thinking about what that child is saying, because that, above everything else, is the most important voice.
I like that one. That's a good one.
And then number 3, evidence is everything. I can't write a report if you're not writing things on Sleuth.
Yeah.
So I need, even if it's just like little Billy came in with Doritos, just a pack of Doritos for his lunchbox today.
Yeah.
I need to know that, because a couple of months down the line, we might be looking at neglect.
Mm-hmm.
So if I know from 2 months ago that he regularly just had a packet of Doritos, or he had a packet of biscuits for his lunch, then it's creating a pattern, it's creating a picture, which makes it a stronger case when I go to a social worker.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. I like that. They're very good. Good top 3. They're very good. And
Thank
your
you.
last quick one is, what is the best lesson anyone has ever taught you? And it doesn't have to be about safeguarding.
All right, okay. Before this, I was a nurse, as I just said, for 32 years. And in my initial training, we were told pain is what the patient says it is and exists whenever the patient says it does. And I've kind of carried that into this role, because it highlights the subjective and personal nature of pain. Now, pain doesn't have to be a surgical wound. Pain doesn't have to be, a black eye. It can be emotional pain, it can be environmental pain. And so I find it relevant in the job I do today, as every child's lived experience is unique to them, and it just reminds me to keep them in the center of my process at all times.
No, that's great. Lovely. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for asking me on. It's lovely to be able to talk about my role. Children with SEND are often kind of like pocketed away, and not thought about so much within the safeguarding forum, for all the reasons I've said. They have very little way of expressing themselves and making themselves known and heard. So it's up to DSLs to champion them, really, and just remind themselves that they're vulnerable and they need you.
Yeah, and I'm sure lots of people will appreciate what you sharing your experiences with us today. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Madeline, you're very welcome.